On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're soaking up the last of summertime rays with 7 of our favorite outdoor spaces, handpicked by our editors. From cozy courtyards in Dallas to pagoda-style chicken coops in Long Island, these tastemakers will have you planting bulbs just in time before the cooler air starts rolling in. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Like and subscribe for more.
Now we're leaving the main house and we're going over to the barn. And I'll tell you the story of the barn when we get there. Come on, Annabelle. Let's go. Come on. Let's go, Annabelle. Come on. Good girl. Good girl. This is my beloved Annabelle, who is wonderful, except she can be a terror. So she can be a terrible terrier, but I adore this dog. She came from Texas and she's a rescue from petfinders.com. We are now in the barn, what we refer to as the barn. When I first bought this house, this was a garage. It was no windows. It had big 50s garage doors that you needed a remote control to open. And it was filled with cars, trucks, gear, you know, everything. When it was pretty much a mess, but we used it. It had the garbage cans and the extra storage things. And when John Rosselli came into my life, he walked around, and I was so afraid that John would say, why don't you sell this house and let's go do something together. And he came into this room and he looked at it and he said, I think we could do something with this space. This barn is 18th century. It's been here since about 1760, 1780. All the timber frame is original to the farm. And when you started to look at it, you saw these beautiful big wide board ceilings. We renovated it by taking the roof off, taking the siding off. We had to heat it. We had to build the chimney. We put in the windows. We basically left the barn standing at one point and used the timber frame as the accent part of the interiors. It's a room that we wanted very much because, as I said always, that we love to entertain. And this is a big room, so I can have 12, 14 people. And in the winter, we've got the fires going. It's just kind of very special. It's filled with lots of things that belong to John, things I've added to it, pictures that we love, many pictures of animals and farm animals and that we've collected over a period of time. There's always a huge flower arrangement on the end of the desk that comes from the garden with this time of year it's hydrangeas and Queen Anne's lace, but every week that gets done. And in the winter it gets big orchids and plants. It's just a great place to entertain in. We got married in this barn. We were together for a number of years, and when we decided to get married, we did get married right in front of the fireplace. And we had 18 people for lunch in the conservatory. And my nephew, then later, many years later, I gave a wedding for my nephew, and Carter and Kate got married here. And then during COVID, my niece and James got married in this room with only immediate family. So we've had 150 people, we've had 18 people, and we've had 8 people for family weddings. So it's really very special for us. You also, if you look closely on a needlepoint chair in this room, is the newest member of our family. About a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, a wonderful cat came into our life, her name is Snowy. She's beautiful white with pink ears. One of the very special things in this room is the mirror over the mantle. It's an extremely large convex mirror, which is, you usually don't see, convex means it's curved, and you don't see them this big that often. And the beauty of it is that it it reflects the entire room. So it gives, when you look in the mirror, you see the whole room, which you don't often see if you just have a piece of straight plate glass. This was a mirror that John had, and we restored it, and it's just a very special piece. One of my favorite paintings is over the door, and it's a painting of horses' rear ends, which I gave to my husband for his birthday one time, and the card said, "This is not what I think of you."
What did he say?
He loved it. He loved it. One of the most important things, again, when you make your guests feel comfortable. Have you ever sat down in a chair and had no place to put your iced tea or your glass of wine, and do I put it on the floor? What do I do with it? So to me, it's called a drinks table, and it's absolutely essential. And I laugh a lot and say that I started Bunny Williams' Home because I was designing drinks tables because I couldn't find enough. And so I started designing them, having them made, and that's launched into a whole furniture collection. But it started with the absolute need for little tables next to every chair. They can be tiny, but everybody should sit down, and you should, in your own house, sit in every chair and say, where do I put my glass of wine? Where do I put my cup of coffee? Because if you're stranded without it, you're not going to be comfortable. Accessorizing tables is, I think it's kind of an art. I always say when you're doing a table, you're creating a little still life. You have to think about it. This table, this beautiful big bone box that John's had for years. So this table is quite balanced. They're pears. There's this wonderful bronze giraffe. We love bronzes. So this is organized because it's kind of paired. On the other hand, on this table, John, over the years, has been collecting these incredible silver fish. So they're not pairs, but you have to arrange them and balance them and line them up. And it's complicated because when it gets dusted and clean, somebody's got to put it back the same way. So having objects and accessories does take some maintenance. I actually love it. I mean, I walk in a room, and when I come here every weekend, I'm always pushing things around a little bit, but I actually love doing that. But you have to think of your tables as a little bit of a still life each time. It's funny in life, you kind of never know what's going to happen. One day I was going to the grocery store, and I went by one of my favorite junk shops, and there, leaning against his building, was this facade of windows. There are 3 arched windows that I did a U-turn, went in, and I said, those windows are so beautiful. And he said they came off of a conservatory on the Hudson River of about 1860. And I said, well, that's the period of my house. We're in this space that we're in. I had a tiny, tiny little greenhouse. There was a shed and there was a little greenhouse. The greenhouse was 32 feet long, and these windows were 32 feet long. So I bought the windows, and we had them delivered. I ripped off the greenhouse and the shed. We built the side windows to match and created this conservatory. This room is probably my most favorite room in the whole house. It is filled with plants. Things grow, passion flowers. This vine is a passion flower, jasmines, ferns, all kinds of different plants, this big palm. And then in the winter, to sit in here on a beautiful winter day and see the garden all covered in snow is really fantastic. We entertain in here, we have dinners in here. My family's coming this weekend. We'll have all 10 of us will have meals in this room. And it's beautiful at night, beautiful at daytime, and it makes a bigger dining room for us. The ceiling are 3 skylights, which I put in to get more light to grow the plants. But actually, because the light is so strong, I've made these sort of scrim that I pull by hand, these shades that are made out of parachute cloth. And you can just pull them, but it makes a better filtered light. And certainly when you're in this room, if the sun were right over top of you, it would be almost unbearable. So I love seeing the sun through the filtered light. And the wonderful thing about this room is it looks out into the parterre garden. And a parterre garden is from the French, where the beds are divided up into geometric shapes, often with boxwood around them, and then they have different plantings. This is my red rocket. We are now going up to the studio, which is up on top of the hill. So we're going to have a little ride up through the orchard by the pool up to the studio. So we built this barn. And then this is the vegetable garden and cutting garden. This is where all the flowers come from. It's a big greenhouse. Look at the tomatoes. And I planted, we got the fields we scoured up the fields to put the Queen Anne's lace in it, because I just love Queen Anne's lace. One of my favorite things. So that's the swimming pool with the temple. That's the pool house.
Good morning, I'm Betty Bearden-Pardee, and welcome to Newport, Rhode Island in foggy July. So glad to have you here. And the last time we met was just a year ago, almost to the day, when we did a home tour of Parterre. And now we're going to do a garden tour, which is where my heart really belongs. So we thought it might be a good idea to start in the Mudroom, which is both my flower arranging center. It's where I keep all of my garden design and the garden and the flower arranging books, and all of my pots, and some that are in all different stages of either disrepair or coming back into shape, and my containers. This is just a small collection. I have more in the garage, but these are the ones I use most of the time. And then, of course, all of my essentials, like this wonderful piece a friend of mine made to go out and collect flowers and keep them in water, and this comes undone. So I love that. And of course, our hats. It's just a place that makes me so happy. I even have one of our cats' gravestone markers, which we have not placed yet. So anyway, I'd like to take you all out in the garden, because for me, that's where my happy place is. And whenever I come home from the trip, the first thing I do is get out into the garden, cut some flowers, and come in and arrange them. So I've always said I designed this garden to be a flower arranger's garden. And everything, whether it's a leaf or a shrub or a rose or whatever, it has a place in a flower arrangement. So that was the criteria. So come on and join me. I'm going to give you a tour of the different gardens at Parterre, whether it's roses or lady mantle or the Woodland garden. Come on. I, like so many of us, just adore roses, but I wanted to do something here at Parterre that isn't done, I think, as much by many of my friends, and that is treating roses not as rose gardens and a single flower, but as a landscape addition. And a great point to be made here is this 80-foot rose chain that we put in about 20 years ago, I think. We started the garden in 23. It's backed by one of Newport's gorgeous weeping beeches. They've always said that if Newport were a tree, it would be a beech. And this is Crown Princess Margaretta, which is a David Austin rose, and actually it was David Austin Jr. who suggested here in person that I use this rose when I was asking his counsel. I love that yummy kind of honeyed apricot color. And actually it won a blue ribbon this year at the Newport Flower Show. But one never knows. Now at this time of the year, the roses have passed, but this one bush just seems to be hanging on. And if you can imagine this, 80 feet of it going around with its canes that are usually covering the chain, but as many of you know, this was a bad year for roses, so we lost the canes, but we didn't lose the shrubs. So again, it almost looks like a floribunda, but at other times it looks like the climbing rose that it is. Not too far away from this gorgeous rose are 2 beds of peonies. And I know, like many of you all, that might be your very favorite flower. We were running out of room in the cutting garden, so we luckily were able to find 2 spots where we have long beds, and we've got my very favorite peonies, which have gone by now. But my gardener had a wonderful idea, and that is to take care of the dirt that is so much a part of a bed and fill it at this time of the year with lady's mantle. So you get this luscious, luscious, full, happy, gorgeous shade of chartreuse after the peonies have gone by, and this will last, and if it's cut back, it will come back again, so we'll have another flush. So the lady's mantle could basically be in bloom for the next 2 months, which is wonderful for me because I have found so many things to do with it above and beyond just enjoying it in its bed. So I'm going to start cutting some, and then we're going to show you what we did on the sun porch. Now see, they're so easy to cut. You just go all the way down and keep. And then I love this basket because I just can tuck things in real quickly. See, and you get a big handful at one time. The other thing too is that this beautiful, beautiful chartreuse fluff is actually a flower. And of course we know that we consider our roses very precious, and so it's so hard to cut them when they look so beautiful and you want them there for people to enjoy. But these I don't have to worry about. As you saw when I was cutting them, I can get a big handful and you can't even tell that I've cut anything. So a favorite friend of mine, and at this time of the year when things are going into a little spell, this carries me through, and it's also my very favorite color, chartreuse. Let's see how quick that was, and it took what, 3 minutes? And you've got a beautiful bouquet that you can put in any container and it will lighten up any room. Well, we're leaving the peony beds with their beautiful flush and lush lady's mantle, and we're going to the cutting garden. We're actually starting at the informal part of the Newport Gardens, and then we'll end up in the formal. So I'll see you in the cutting garden. Now, I'm not holding back here. I'm telling you all of the dirty tricks that we have to play here. Not the least of which is creating a not very attractive but serviceable deer netting door to the cutting garden. And unfortunately, it didn't keep out the wabbits, who have been more of a pest than I ever remember them being. And the other dirty secret is that we came in yesterday and they had nibbled away at 7 rose bushes with the thorns. Don't ask me how they do it. So if you have any secrets, please let me know. Well, every garden has to have a cutting garden, and in our case especially because my interest is so much in the shade of green and in plant material, the size of the leaves, the colors, etc. And we've created the formal gardens around that color palette. So in the cutting garden, I can go crazy with colors, with my roses, with my lavender, with my sweet peas, with some more roses. And this I love right here. It's a formal little parterre of its own, and that large pot that is filled with both nasturtiums and parsley. So it has a practical side too. I love mixing herbs in with flower plantings, and they're also very good for keeping bugs away. And this is a funny story. We had 2 tall apple standards over there and needed to cut a long branch of one of them. We cut it off, and I said, well, let's just put it in here and use it as a trellis until it really dies and we have to take it away. I want to say this was 8 years ago. It is also, which my gardener reminded me, sitting in a metal bucket of quickcrete, basically concrete. And the poor tree has not figured it out yet. It's still blooming 8 years later, and it's in quickcrete. Don't ask me how, but we used to have a clematis there, and we use this as a trellis for the clematis. But frankly now, this tree has told us it wants to live. So I think in its own stateliness, it adds a lot more than just using it for a trellis.
Well, this is my patio, and this is where we have lots of other intimate dinner parties. We have lots of dinner parties here at this house, and we have other places on the property. We have dinner parties in other kitchens as well. So here I have a little bit of Palesi Majolica, and also this is more of that set of dishes that Jonathan and I made for a show not too long ago. Again, that tropical theme, and again, we're near the water, and if you look carefully, almost everything is about the ocean here. We had a problem with this part of the house. Our watering system, we didn't have drip irrigation on everything, and so we decided we would be the lazy gardeners that we can be. We actually did all succulents and cactus up here on this part of the garden. And these are all things that need very little water. We do have a couple of espaliated apple trees, or I mean, what they call columnar apple trees here too. And we actually have those on drip so that they actually don't get neglected for water. But this was a way to start a new collection, and I think it works really beautifully to have all these succulents as part of the garden out here. This clematis is really doing something special for us today. I didn't expect it to be so in bloom. It's really beautiful. When we moved here, this is where there was actually a huge garage, right where we're standing in the middle of this fountain. And Jonathan and I rented a backhoe, and we dug out the fountain ourselves, and we laid all the cinder blocks, and we made this fountain. Come on, let's go to the greenhouse. This is our greenhouse. This is Lord and Burnham greenhouse. It actually came from a famed Whitney estate. And a friend of ours gave us a phone call and said they're going to decommission 3 of the greenhouses. You can have one as long as you provide us some insurance. And I jumped at this thought of it, and we ended up putting this in our van, one little piece at a time. It was 60 by 100 when we got it, and we actually made it much smaller so it would be something we could manage. And Jonathan and I rebuilt it here on the property about 7 years ago. And so this is something we always dreamed of having, and we have it. Again, it was 60 by 100. It's now about 20 by 25, and it's a size that we can actually manage ourselves and pay for all the heat during the winter. But one of the most magical things about this is in the wintertime when actually it's snowing and it's just awful out. We'll come out here, we have the heat up to about 75 degrees, and we're in Florida. Actually, most of the tropicals that are in the yard come back into here. This is it in its most empty state right now. And it actually is just summering over with fewer plants right now. It's much more dramatic in the winter. Next, I'm going to take you to our Asian garden. We call it an Asian garden because it's not really Japanese and it's not Chinese, it's just blank Asia. This is actually where our chickens live. Our chickens are no more though because they passed away during COVID. They were in their 20s. They lived to be about 20 to 25 years old, and ours got about 21. We think that's about their age. We're now in the Asian garden, and as I said before, the Asian garden is a loose-fitting term because it's neither Chinese nor Japanese. It's our interpretation of an Asian garden. This is actually the oldest tree on the property. We think it was actually placed here at the time the property was built, 1910. It's actually a boulevard cypress, and there's actually a botanical name on there which I won't bore you with. As I said before, this is where a house we built for our chickens. And chickens are actually Asian animals. We didn't know that until we did a little research. And turns out they were actually originated from the Far East. And so we had to build them a pagoda to live in. And we try and do things sort of according to Asian gardens here. If you see, this tree has been made into what they call clouds. And we trim this every year in order to be able to make it look the way it does. It's high maintenance, but it's very pretty, I think. If you look at the pagoda, we actually went to Chinatown and we actually found, this is a moongate window. And we made this, and then we made it into a Dutch door. So it opens like this. Well, this is our white garden, and as most people know, Sissinghurst was the home of the first white garden, and this is Kippen Hill's little miniaturized version of a white garden. If you see, we have lots of Annabelle hydrangeas, and we have white-tipped hostas. Everything in this garden is white, including these wisteria that actually bloom in the springtime. Everything has a bit of a season here. There's some lilies here that are just about ready to bloom. They didn't decide to give their show yet. And these are all white lilacs that are past bloom now. This is one of our perennial beds, and we love roses. Jonathan absolutely adores roses, and these are simple knockout roses, but we found them to be the most floriferous and the most reliable rose that we can actually find. They are coming out with new varieties all the time. This yellow yarrow is a good performer for us. We've just finished up with alliums. We had some really wonderful allium displays out here. You can still see some of the seed heads, which I think are really remarkable. I love these seed heads. I don't take them off until well after they're done blooming because they're so pretty. I love the structure of them. But when they're actually in full bloom, they're these giant globes of purple.
Let me show you the outdoor space. So over here we have my husband's spice garden. And then over here we have my favorite spot of the whole backyard is our peonies. It's our bird feeder, so it's lovely to look out in the breakfast nook and see the birds and the bird feeder and then the beautiful peonies, which I definitely need to clip. This is our entertainment area. All the furniture is from Serena and Lily. It's very white. It's hard to keep it clean, to be honest. But these chairs over here are some of my favorite. They remind me of Alice in Wonderland for some reason, but they're super funky. I found them on Cherish, and I was going back and forth for a long time, but they kept coming up on my favorites, and eventually I made the decision to purchase. I think they're really fun. And then this table is also Serena and Lily. But over here we have amazing flowers, roses. We entertain out here often. We'll usually put a tent out with tables, which is really fun, or picnics. And then if you look over here, we have about 2 acres beyond this area. And my husband has a vegetable garden down here that is not yet done. And then we're also planning to put up some solar. So it goes back about 2 acres, and there's a nice creek in the back. So the future plan after the solar and the vegetable garden, I would love to build a conservatory out there. But we got time. When we bought the home, the tire swing was here, as I mentioned earlier. So all the visions of our future children swinging on this tree kind of came to life, which I am so excited about. But yeah, this really is the reason why we bought the home, was because of this backyard. The great thing about the DC area is that we really get all of the wonderful seasons. So right now, the end of spring, all of the flowers blooming. In the summer, a different range of flowers are coming up. But then in the fall, it's absolutely gorgeous, and the trees turn orange and red. We just love the space, and we're out here all the time. And even the winter, when it snows in this backyard, it feels like you're in a winter wonderland. So this is certainly the reason for purchasing this home, was this backyard. These are the peonies. They certainly need to be clipped, but I just think they're absolutely gorgeous. I need to actually bring them in and cut them for my tabletop. But I love the color. It's bright pink and happy. And then in our front yard, we actually have white peonies, which are really beautiful too.
Well, this is where we spend pretty much all of our time. So a few years ago, when we first bought the house, let me back up. When we first bought the house, there was this tiny little postage stamp porch here with a big trellis over it. And it was dark and it was tiny, and really you could sit out there, but that was it. And it was covered in stuff all the time because we've got a lot of big, beautiful trees in our neighbor's yard, and they dropped all their beautiful leaves and gook and stuff all over our furniture out there. So one January, my husband's a professor, and he was like, man, I still got 2 weeks left till I go back. I'm gonna build us a porch. I was like, yeah, okay, brah. That sounds great. So he ripped it all down. And I mean, I came out here maybe 2 days to help, and it was 18 degrees and my fingers were white after about 15 minutes. And I was like, I don't know how you're doing this. You're way tougher than I am. Long story short, he built this whole porch for us, and thank goodness, because it really increased the size of our house. It's literally half of our house again. And so it gives us a really, really large living room where we can gather, 8 to 10 people comfortably. And then it also gives us a dining space where we can dine that many, because it's really important to me, if we're having a dinner party, that the same amount of people who dine can also sit, because you got to go somewhere after and before dinner. And so I want everybody to be comfortable the entire time. So we first got these sofas. They were part of, you guessed it, they're part of a show house situation. And so we were specifying them for the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival. And since we knew that meant that people were going to be drinking wine on them, et cetera, we went ahead and got outdoor sofas. So these are outdoor sofas. They're fully washable. I can zip off all the slip covers, throw them in the wash, pop them back on. I do that a couple of times a year. Other than that, they're just here. Pollen season, you kind of gotta vacuum them a little bit, but that's all. But they're so comfortable. We live on them. This is where we have movie nights, game nights, just laying out here to read. The girls love each having their own sofa out here. There's just a lot more open. So, and you're with nature, which we love nature. We love hiking and being outdoors and birds and gardens and all of that. So them getting to be out here and listen to the birds and spotting the birds is really fun for them too. So we have the living room side, and then we have the dining room side. So for the dining room side, this is actually a relatively new addition. When we first did the porch, we put nothing over here. There were a couple of easels for kids, and that was all. And it was their big place that they could run and play, because we didn't have a large room for them to be able to do that. So it was awesome because they could do whatever they wanted art-wise, and I just hose it off. And we didn't have to have rules out here, and that was so lovely. And now they're a little older, and so we've popped a table up here, and it's not a fancy table. It's one that requires a tablecloth if you're having friends over, but I can rip it off and the kids can still do artwork here and make a big old mess. And we can fold it down if they want to ride roller skates or whatever wildness they want to do out here. But it keeps that flexibility. But we have loved having a big table out here because we can seat so many more people. And it's just really comfortable dining, as long as it's not dead of summer or dead of winter. So this is set with some of my favorite little things, including these beautiful pottery plates that my husband and I had thrown for our wedding. Instead of doing everyday china, we did pottery because I just love the texture and story that has with it. And then these are actually a couple, and this is a set of napkins. I was on this trip as an alumni trip for Savannah College of Art and Design, and it was in the south of France, and we went one day to market. And I was going through, and I wanted a set of napkins, and I kept seeing them, and they were pretty, and blah, blah. They had my initials on them, so I had to buy them. So they came home, and I love them. They're just so beautiful and thick and rich and have so much history to them, which I love, love, love. I love fresh flowers. We don't have a large cutting garden or anything. I'm working towards it though. Have a teeny tiny one in the front yard. But we have a very shady yard, so it's kind of difficult to do. But I love flowers, and one day there will be a giant garden, probably when someone builds a house next door and takes down one of my shade trees, and that'll make me sad. But I'll get a garden out of it. But part of my therapy, if you will, was about midnight last night I was doing these flowers. So if I have extra bags, that's why. But I love doing flowers. Some of these were gathered on a roadside. Some of these come from a florist, but it's a mixture. And I just love having fresh flowers anytime I can in the house. I think it gives such a specialness to any occasion.
I love the windows, and they, of course, open up and slide, and we can open up to the outside. When the weather's nice, we can have a wonderful party outside. I've done 3 tables of 10 out there and then served cold foods, like vichyssoise and sandwiches. Come out. We've got a creek behind the house, and sometimes we have ducks. Well, the ducks aren't there now, but there's the pond. And having the woods here gives us a wonderful secluded feel to the house, that we're in the country and yet we're on a busy Dallas street. I designed this garden when we first got the house. I planted the holly bushes and divided the garden into 3 sections. I love the view from here, looking through the 3 sections to the identical segment down there. That's off of that segment is centered on the fireplace in the study, and this is centered on the dining room. I feel like that we've got Sherwood Forest behind the house. I looked out one morning, I came out here with my coffee and looked over, and there was a little, it was like a jungle. A cat was creeping along, and birds were flying around, and there was a red-headed woodpecker in this tree right here. And that woodpecker has come back 2 different years. I wish he'd come back again. He must have died, but maybe his descendants will come. But they particularly like that one tree.
We have a little courtyard off the kitchen, and I thought it might be fun for y'all to come with me and see how we use this space. So we use this space all the time for just an extra area for dining. We had an awning man make our poles up here so we could permanently tie in our party lights for nighttime. But this is such a nice area because it only seats 6. It's very easy to do off the kitchen. And I had a bunch of tablecloths made in lots of different fabrics. I keep them under my stairs, and then they're there, they're always ready, and I can change it up and make it feel different, make it feel really casual. I even have like some great Chinese silk pieces for if you're having Thai food, or you're having Chinese food, or you're trying to do something fun like that. So this is just an area that feels special at night. And here is our screen porch. So come on in. So in Dallas, we need a screen porch. We have mosquitoes all the time. And our weather is really nice in the winter. So we spend pretty much from October to May in areas like this. It's not that cold, so you can still use it in the winter. But I bought some of these really great exterior chairs and exterior fabrics, so it feels like a really, it feels nice just to be outside, especially if you've been exercising and things, just keep going. This area out here we use for mahjong. So whenever I have the girls over and we're playing mahjong, we'll get our snacks or our food in there, and it's just a step away. And I usually use a tablecloth. So I had tablecloths made out here that match that other table. So I have had parties for 10 and just split people up, and then their tables match. But we use this all the time.
Thanks for watching. For more Homeworthy content, be sure to like and subscribe.